Hey y'all, it's Cody from the Keeper's Nerd. How you doing? Time for a quick battle report update. Finally got to play a good, interesting game of 10th again with the new points updates. 2,000 point game. I was on 2,000 points on the dot. Necrons versus Custodes. Just kind of see how they lined up. My opponent was running 3 squads of 2 Terminators each. 2 squads of swords and boards with like 2 or 3 of them, and then the others had the spears, so that way extra damage. And then the swords and boards, the guys could take the initial hits, and then a blade champion in the first group. And the second group, I'm pretty sure there was a leader, but I never even got engaged in combat with them because they were scoring secondary stuff at the back, and then they just didn't move up in time. A group of 3 bikes. And then the last thing that I can remember of, I think that was all it was a Imperial Knight, or, the Wandering Knight kind of thing. So quite a different list. Definitely the points updates have changed things because now everything's way more expensive. My team consisted of 2,000 points, Strengths and Catan with a Sempiternal Weave. Still good. It didn't hurt him that much. I tried a Doomsday Arc for the first time in 10th. After the change, I hadn't even used it before the changes. I just heard they were good, and so I wanted to use at least a proxy to do it. Awesome, very cool. Group of Necron warriors, full 20 with a Lord, an Overlord proxied as a Lord, and I believe he was wearing the Hypermaterial Ablator. No, he was not. Nope. They didn't have anything extra in there. They had the Lord and the Orc and the Diviner with 2 Cryptothralls. So cut some points on the Overlord down to a Lord, so that way the Cryptothralls and the Necron warriors actually even out, as well as drop a little points from the Overlord to the Lord. Lich-Guard full group with Nemeser Zandrek leading and a Technomancer following up. 3 bikes, Tomb Blades, with their shield veins and the other thing that gives them the invuln save and then the +1 to their save. It's not the Nebula Scope, it's the other thing, and I can't remember what it is. So there was those 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers, a full group of Locust Destroyers with a Locust Lord, and then lastly a Canoptic Reanimator. So lots of groupings, and that was quite the list to check through. Turn 1 went to my opponent, and he moved up. I thought I had my stuff guarded. My Locust Heavy Destroyers and my Locust Heavy Destroyers were grouped up into a group together, and my Doomsday Arc I thought were covered. He got a beat on them just barely, so they got a +1 to their cover save, but it doesn't really matter because it just hits so hard. Except for the Locust Heavy Destroyers, they at least helped. He took out one of my Locust Heavy Destroyers, almost killed my other one. It had like 1 wound left, and my Doomsday Arc got hit real hard down into his damage category. He didn't die, but I think he took like 9 wounds of the 14 just from that volley. But they were within a foot of the Canoptic Reanimator, and so I got to heal back. And the Locust Heavy Destroyers on my turn, that was the only big action there because he moved forward with everything else because they couldn't really shoot much of anything that first turn. My turn, I healed those back, so Locust Heavy Destroyer came back to life and then had, I think, 1 wound on him. And then Doomsday Arc got back to like 6 wounds. Not great, because I was like, uh-oh, he's going to get hit again and die. But he at least healed some, which was good. The 2d3s helped, right? Gave me 3 wounds back. Really interesting. Moved them out, and they started hitting. Well, so movement, those guys all moved out so they could fire at the... Well, the Locust Heavy Destroyers needed both of them to be able to see, and only one of them could. So I moved them out a little bit. The Doomsday Arc I did move, and I shouldn't have. I didn't even think about that, and I shouldn't have, so then I could have gotten devastating wounds. But I rolled really well on his shots, so it was like 6 shots at the first one, and so it was nasty. And my Transcendent Catan, I teleported to the middle of the map because we were playing in objective mode where our personal objectives didn't matter, but the ones in the middle were the only things that we'd score off of, and over time they would disappear and we had to roll off on those just to do random. And the one closest to him was the alpha, so it was going to disappear first, and then middle, and then the only one left at the very end of the game was the one closest to me, so they were kind of in a slanted thing towards our spawn areas because our spawn areas were slanted as well. So actually not really necessarily the closest to him entirely, but I think just slightly a few more inches. So yes, but it was just kind of interesting. My movement, I had my bikes scout up ahead into the front of the, like right beside this big building to get to the first objective. And then my Lich Guard moved up to hide behind the building. They never got shot at all the entire game. It was just kind of funny. I've never seen that happen. My Necron warriors moved up towards the middle. Reanimator stayed behind the initial building where he started so he couldn't be targeted, just healing out the wazoo. Locust Destroyers moved up. Did they target anything? I think they did. I think they moved up just enough to target. Yeah, some of them targeted the Imperial Knight and actually did some damage, because with their leader, man, they can do some pretty serious work. It's kind of awesome. So Transcendent Catan also moved up and did his teleport into the front line and also hit the Imperial Knight to the point where I got it down in the first turn. I didn't destroy it, but I put it in the damage category, and I'm glad I did because it actually changed everything. So then Imperial Knight moves up some next turn. His squad of swords and boards moves to the middle of the board and actually engages Transcendent Catan and actually gets him down to half health after everything is done that round in round 2. It was pretty impressive. So he goes to 6 wounds remaining, 6 wounds damage, right? Pretty awesome. I was impressed. Like, oh, geez. Yeah. He took the middle objective off me at that turn because of charging in with his Custodes group, but I'm so glad that they shrunk down those sizes, because I think I just got rid of 2 of them with my Transcendent Catan whenever it was my turn to melee. It was really cool. His Imperial Knight fired at my stuff. Again, the Locust Heavy Destroyers and the Doomsday Ark did a little bit of damage, I think, to the Doomsday Ark. If memory serves, yeah, I don't remember what it got to, but it wasn't too bad. And then, because I think what went through was the lower damage stuff that was targeting him, and then my Locust Heavy Destroyers, I think I lost one of them again and didn't even get damaged on the other guy, something like that. And so, yeah, I think the Necron Warriors, I don't know if they got targeted at all that turn. I don't know if they did. Maybe. I think they did a little bit. Yeah, they did. They got shot at a little bit. It was fine. Took some hits there, not a big deal. He started teleporting in one guy up on an objective up at the top of Terminators, and he wasn't really teleporting them in my backline because there wasn't anything to score back there now unless you got a secondary, and my secondaries were taking out characters, which was really interesting, or the big Imperial Knights, which apparently count as characters, which is really cool. And that was interesting. So my turn 2 happens, and my movement phase was really interesting, right? So Locust Destroyers, I was getting a little nervous because he'd actually moved his bikes back that last turn to score the secondary of Investigate Signals on the corners. And that was interesting because then they weren't charging in, with that epic big range to get to me, because if he'd ever charged my Locust Destroyers, I think that would have been it for them, and that would be so much less firepower. Because those things, man, 3 shots each, with critical hits being 5s and 6s, and I think, do they reroll hit rolls of 1? I think they do. And then you can use the stratagem to make them reroll wound rolls, so you can get that 33% chance of 5s and 6s just happening with the -2 AP for damage. Like, it's a lot going through. Really, really nice stuff there. I like those weapons, because even though they're strength 5, they're really not, because you can lethal hits, and if you have that guy in there, you really make them do some pretty devastating shenanigans. So, because a 5 and 6 is just disgusting. That's a 33% chance if you can reroll hit rolls of 1. That's a lot of hits. And then resurrect them. So I got my Locust Heavy Destroyers back to full health from the Reanimator. And Doomsday Arc went back up, I think, to 4 wounds. He was doing just fine. So he rolled well there. That was good. And then they fired the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Well, movement was just kind of adjusting up, moving the Lich Guard onto my closer objective. And again, they never got pegged. My bikes ahead of them out in the open just to do some shots, because there was groups of the Terminators coming in on the middle objective as well. My warriors moved up to the middle and started taking that objective, or getting ready to charge the group there after they fired. And yeah, they at least were on the objective, and then they were going to charge if memory serves. My Transcendent Katana did something really crazy. You know, here's 310 points of my build. I retreated him. So he didn't get to fire, he didn't get to melee. I just was like, there's too many attacks that could come in here, and if just some rolls go bad, he could die right here. I'm good. And actually he healed, I think he only healed 1 hit point because he was outside of the range of Transcendent Katana, so it wasn't very good there. So he retreated. He just fell back. Really, really interesting there. And in that round, defeated the Imperial Knight with the Locust Heavy Destroyers and the Doomsday Arc. He didn't blow up, but he was taken off the table. That was huge. And then my Locust Destroyers started popping shots into the squad that was right there in the middle. That's what happened. That's right. And all that was left was Blade Champion. And he had already, I think he only had 2 wounds remaining. I mean, it was bad. And so I didn't fire on him with the Necron Warriors, if memory serves, because I wanted to make sure that I took it. And so we actually I charged them with the Necron Warriors with like an 11-inch charge, even though I was right beside them anyway, and got him, right? Because I think I even used a stratagem in that moment to give me +1 AP, so an extra AP, and +1 my strength. Was mostly I was just wanting the AP to just make sure something went through and stuck. Even if he didn't die, it was not going to be a big deal. That just meant I wouldn't get shot for the turn anyway. So, but he went down. We, consolidated around the objective. Kind of crazy there. And yeah, if memory serves, something shot also at the bikes during that section. I think it may have been the Locust Heavy Destroyers, because my Doomsday Arc took out the big boy, and the Locust Heavy Destroyers managed to destroy one of them, the bikes, because they do have 6 damage. They're nasty. And so on turn 3, his Terminators got in there, started shooting at the middle objective with 2 groups of Terminators. 3 of them shot, but 2 of them were moving in. One of them made the charge. No, both of those little Terminator groups made the charge, and I got hit pretty hard, but I was within a foot because of how big the blob was to the reanimator. So I was on an objective, so D3 +3, and if I'm using the stratagem, +1 of healing. I mean, it's just silly amounts. And I had the Lord in there with the Resurrection Orb, so he would res on their turn and mine. And so I had like 7 things out of that list, and then by the time it got to my turn, they all came back. Yeah. And somehow in there managed to not be in close quarters combat with that for some reason. Oh, that's why, because he charged me with those 2 Terminator squads and a bike squad, and I lost like 7 or something things, right? It was pretty rough, and at some point I think I popped a healing in there. But I removed models from the front where the Terminators 2 different squads were, so that way the second Terminator squad didn't actually get to attack me. And that was really, really interesting. So yeah, here I am on this objective. There's a lot of stuff there, and on my melee in that turn of his turn 3, I had Orc and the Diviner close enough to his bikes. I made Orkin go crazy and do the stars are right. And so all of a sudden, 6 attacks, strength 12, right? And every wound with that thing is a critical wound with devastating wounds, which is a D3 of damage. He wiped the bikes. That was awesome, just to be like that. My opponent was very frustrated, and rightfully so. It was just ridiculous what was happening. So it got to my turn 3, and he was ready to be done, because he had literally killed nothing on the field, right? And mine just kept coming back. Because, I mean, that was the thing. Like, they drop, and then I just have them res. Kind of optic reanimators are still really good, even with the points increase. So I was like, I just want to see the end of this turn 3, because he still had that whole swords and boards squad in the back with a leader. And I went to town on the 3 Terminator squads and wiped all 3 of them off that turn 3. You know, Transcendent Catan, Necron Warriors, the Locust Destroyers, you know, and then my big guns that can just shoot at the stuff and do damage and take off one if they actually connect through. By the time that the end of turn 3, and that's where we called it, the only squad left that my opponent had was the Swords and Boards group with their leader in the back. That was it. That was it. I don't even know who that leader was, because I never even saw the group, because they were behind a building and they had done the investigate signals in the back, and then they just weren't close enough to deal with stuff. Yeah, I think Necrons are actually in a pretty decent spot. I know the win rate's gone down, actually, but I think once people figure out some of the tricks to them, I think it's going to be epic. But also, the Custodes are way down comparatively to where they were. I mean, let's be honest, their mortal wound protection lost a lot whenever dev wounds changed. There you go. So yeah, that's kind of the battle report. Very interesting. We ended at turn 3, and I was very much ahead anyway on points from secondaries and the main objectives, because I'd taken the 2 of the 3 for quite a bit. And also my secondaries were a lot of, you know, wipe out units or models and wipe out characters, you know, get rid of everybody on the objectives and score points, that kind of stuff. I was doing really well. And at first when I got those, I was like, oh man, this is going to be terrible. But I just couldn't put me down, so then I just kept firing and doing other things. Oh, I forgot. I did have one other thing that was being used. Hexmark Destroyer, forgot about him. He was with my Necron Warriors squad, and yeah, he fired a few times at some of the Terminator squads. Did, you know, 1 damage each time, but it adds up whenever you got all the other stuff firing at them, and then finally gets them to drop. So he was all right. I like him just to be a little bit of harassment. So yeah, that's where it was. Turn 3, called the game, because I had nothing gone and still had my entire force, and all he had left was one unit, and that unit wasn't going to be able to do what was needed. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think of the Necrons and the Custodes after the balanced data slate from last week. I've been Cody from the Keepers Nerdum. Was it last week? Was it 2 weeks ago? I think it might have been 2 weeks ago. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to play right away. Yeah, let me know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. Take care.